When you think of a business, you you probably picture something permanent,
Right.
like a physical building, maybe a brass plaque on the door, or an official corporate charter locked in a safe somewhere.
Right, yeah. We expect companies to be these fixed concrete things.
Exactly. But step into the fast-moving market of Vietnam, and that solid building suddenly looks a lot more like, well, a shapeshifter.
Hmm.
So welcome to today's deep dive. For you, the listener, whether you're looking to expand into new markets, studying international law, or just, fascinated by how the global economy actually operates behind closed doors, our mission today is to break down exactly how to do business safely and flexibly in this highly dynamic environment.
Yeah, and we are pulling our insights today from two really detailed legal sources. First, there's this comprehensive guide on conducting corporate due diligence from the legal experts at Lewitt Menku. And second, we have this fascinating lecture that blends academic theory with practical application about business cooperation contracts. That one comes from experts at the Vietnam International Arbitration Center and the University of Economics and Law.
Which is great because the reality of international business is that, sure, trust is great, but verification is the only thing that keeps you from going bankrupt. So first, we're going to look at the mechanics of digitally investigating a potential partner in Vietnam to make sure they aren't, a phantom.
Yeah, ghost company.
Right. And then once you've vetted them, we're going to explore this brilliant legal loophole, the business cooperation contract, that actually allows you to build a massive business empire with that partner without ever officially starting a new company together.
Which is wild. But the detective work of corporate due diligence is really where it has to start. Our sources emphasize that pulling a company's background isn't just about verifying they exist. I mean, it is a strategic imperative.
Because you need to know who you're actually dealing with.
Exactly. You are looking at their financial capacity to see if they can, actually pay their debts. You're trying to anticipate legal risks before they turn into really expensive disputes.
Yeah.
And you could even use this same data to scout your competitors and reverse engineer their market strategy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you're trying to vet a partner from across the world, you might assume you just, Google their company name and see what comes up.
Right, the standard internet search.
Yeah, but the Lewitt Q Guide lays out 3 specific government portals you have to use, and they serve very different purposes. It's almost like you have to look at different aspects of a person's life. The first is the National Business Registration Portal.
Which is at denkicondoin.gov.vn.
Right. And to me, this looks essentially like the company's Instagram or social media profile. It gives you the public-facing basics, the official name, the tax code, the legal representative, and whether their status is active. It's just the baseline identity check.
Yeah, it tells you if they legally exist in the eyes of the state. But just like a social media profile, it only shows you the surface level.
It's just the highlights.
Exactly. It doesn't tell you if they're drowning in debt behind the scenes. That requires the second portal, which is run by the General Department of Taxation. So if the first portal is their social media, this one is basically their credit report.
Right. And getting that credit report requires specific keys. You can't just type in a company name on the tax portal. The guide specifically notes you need their exact tax code, their registered address, and the personal ID number of their legal representative.
Which makes sense, right? Because tax debt is highly sensitive information. This portal shows their actual tax obligations and their payment history.
So you could have a company that looks great on paper.
Oh, absolutely. A company might have a beautiful active profile on the main national registry. But if you look at the tax portal and see they're secretly defaulting on their government obligations, I mean, that was a massive red flag. A company that doesn't pay the government certainly isn't going to pay a foreign partner.
Wow, yeah. Good point. And then we have the third layer, which is the local Department of Planning and Investment. This is like the deep background check, the private investigator phase.
Yeah, the deep dive.
And this one isn't just a quick web query. According to Circular 012021, you actually have to send an official written request, pay a required state fee, and then you receive a physical document.
Right, a hard copy.
Yeah. And this document details the deep structural history of the company. It tracks changes in their management over time and, crucially, changes in their charter capital.
Which is the amount of initial money the founders committed to lock into the business. Seeing the history of that capital tells you if the company is actually growing, or if investors have been quietly pulling their money out over the years.
Ah.
What's fascinating here is that the design is intentional. These 3 portals act as overlapping safety nets. No single portal gives you the entire narrative.
You need all 3.
Right, but when you combine the baseline legality of the national portal the financial reality of the tax portal, and the historical timeline from the local planning department, you paint a really high-resolution picture of a company's actual health.
I am slightly confused by the setup, though. I mean, if the national portal is run by the state, and the tax portal is run by the state, and the Department of Planning is a state agency, why am I acting like a private investigator cross-referencing them? Shouldn't the government just share a single unified database?
It feels redundant, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels really redundant to check three different official sources for one company.
Well, the databases are theoretically connected, but you have to factor in the messy reality of how businesses operate on the ground. Business data is incredibly volatile.
What do you mean by volatile?
Well, a living company might move its headquarters to a different district on a Tuesday, inject new capital on a Wednesday, and then change its entire board of directors by Friday.
Oh, so it's a synchronization lag.
Exactly that. A company files a change with their local district. The district office processes it, but there might be a delay before that local change is synchronized up to the national portal or, over to the tax portal's separate system.
So one system might just be behind.
Right. An error or a processing delay in just one of those systems means you could be looking at completely outdated information if you only check a single source. So by cross-referencing all three, you triangulate the truth in real time and catch those discrepancies.
And that lag is exactly where a fraudulent partner could hide.
Oh, absolutely.
And speaking of fraud, the sources throw up some serious warnings about how you conduct this search. They explicitly tell you to violently protect your own personal data during this process.
Yes, this is huge.
Because there are plenty of third-party apps out there offering to do this background check for you, but the guide warns never to hand over your personal ID number or your primary email to unverified services.
I mean, the irony of getting your identity stolen while trying to run due diligence on someone else is a very real threat here.
That would be a nightmare.
It really would. Software and automated apps can be incredibly helpful. The good ones speed up the process and even send you automatic alerts if a potential partner suddenly runs into legal trouble.
But you have to be careful.
Right. The rule is strict, only use reputable tools from trusted providers. If you cannot verify the tool's security, you just have to stick strictly to manually searching the official government portals.
Okay, so let's say I've done the work. I've scoured the tax portal. I've pulled the deep background records from the Department of Planning, and this potential partner is absolutely pristine. I want to go into business with them. But here in the friction point, I don't really want the massive administrative nightmare of forming a brand new limited liability company or a joint stock company with them.
Because that's a lot of work.
It's so much work.
Yeah.
Setting up a new legal entity means drafting corporate charters, registering brand new capital, and creating a new board of directors. It's heavy, it's slow, and it feels incredibly permanent for a project that might only last like a few years.
Yeah, it's a massive commitment.
Right. So how do I legally structure a shared project without getting bogged down in all that corporate red tape?
Well, you utilize a business cooperation contract, or a BCC.
Or a BCC.
Right. This is a specific mechanism in Vietnamese law designed entirely for flexibility. Based on the 2015 Civil Code, specifically Articles 504 through 512 and the 2020 Investment Law, a BCC is a written agreement between individuals or legal entities.
Okay.
The core purpose is to contribute assets and effort, and to share the resulting profits and responsibilities entirely without establishing a new legal economic entity.
So what does this all mean? It's kind of like moving in together and agreeing to split the rent and the grocery bills instead of legally getting married and opening a joint bank account.
That is a perfect analogy, actually.
You stay legally and financially independent from each other, but you share the upside and downside of this one specific living arrangement.
Yes. And just like moving in together, the specific rules depend on who is on the lease.
How so?
Well, if a BCC is strictly between domestic Vietnamese investors, it is governed purely by the civil code. It just functions as a standard civil transaction. But if you bring in international money, the jurisdiction shifts.
Ah, okay.
A BCC involving a foreign investor falls under the investment law, which means it legally requires a formal investment registration certificate from the state.
How does a phantom partnership actually operate day to day, though? Like, if there is no company to sign contracts with vendors or hire staff, who actually holds the pen?
Well, the law provides two pathways. The members of the BCC can officially appoint one single representative to act on behalf of everyone in all civil transactions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that appointed entity just uses their own legal status to execute the project's needs. But if they fail to appoint a representative, The law dictates that all members must participate in establishing and executing those transactions.
Wait, all of them? That sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare.
It can be, yeah,
If you have 5 partners in a BCC and no appointed representative, you'd need all 5 to sign off on buying office supplies.
pretty much.
Which leads me to a really critical question about the risk involved here. You mentioned they share responsibilities. Let's say this specific BCC project goes horribly wrong. It goes bankrupt, owing millions to local suppliers.
Okay.
Because there is no separate limited liability company, there is no corporate veil to shield the partners. Who pays the bill?
Yeah, this is the catch. If the common assets of the BCC project run out, the members must use their own personal private assets to cover the debt.
Wait, seriously?
Yes. The law requires them to pay out of pocket in proportion to their original contribution share in the contract. So if you agreed to fund 60% of the project, you are personally on the hook for 60% of the fallout debt.
Even if it bankrupts my other businesses?
Even if it means liquidating your separate corporate assets to cover it, yes. The flexibility of having no corporate structure comes with the trade-off of direct liability.
Man, if my personal assets are on the line like that, what if I see the ship sinking and I want out? A contract this flexible implies people can come and go, but how does the law actually manage changes in membership without a traditional corporate board to vote on it?
It relies entirely on consensus and really the text of your original agreement. You can generally only leave the BCC if your exit strategy was explicitly pre-agreed upon in the contract itself.
And if it wasn't?
If it wasn't, but you have a valid, legitimate reason to leave, you can still exit, but only if you secure the approval of more than 50% of the total members.
Why specifically more than 50%?
It's a balancing act. It prevents a single minority partner from holding the entire project hostage, while also protecting the project from being suddenly abandoned by a key player without the majority's consent.
That makes sense. What happens if I just walk away?
If you just walk away without meeting those conditions, you are legally in breach of contract and completely open to lawsuits.
Yikes.
But, assuming you leave legally, however, you have the right to take back the specific assets you contributed.
What if my asset is, like, a giant piece of machinery they're actively using?
If you contributed a vital piece of machinery, and removing it would destroy the ongoing project, the remaining members are obligated to cash you out for its value. And by the way, admitting a brand new member also requires that same greater than 50% approval threshold.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. There is a massive loophole, or rather a massive perk for foreign money here. Because foreign investors fall under the investment law for these contracts, our sources point to Article 49. A foreign partner in a BCC is legally allowed to set up an official operating office right there in Vietnam to manage the contract.
Which is huge. That provision solves one of the biggest practical hurdles for foreign direct investment. Establishing a full subsidiary in a new country usually takes months of paperwork, heavy capital requirements, and intense regulatory scrutiny.
But with this operating office under Article 49, the foreign investor gets their own official seal, they can open local Vietnamese bank accounts, and they can directly hire local labor.
Exactly.
It gives them a physical, legal anchor in the country to execute their side of the contract without ever establishing a permanent corporate footprint. And the speed is what caught my eye.
The 15 days, right?
Yes. The law states the local investment authority has exactly 15 days to grant this certificate once the valid paperwork is filed. Being able to set up a legal operating presence in a foreign country in 2 weeks is incredibly fast.
It really is. It makes the BCC an incredibly frictionless vehicle for international collaboration. Now, when we talk about flexible contracts and avoiding corporate structures, it's easy to assume this is only used for, like, small-scale operations.
Right, like 2 local tech startups collaborating on an app for 6 months, for instance.
Exactly. But to see how big this actually gets, we have to look at the real-world case study provided in the VIAC lecture.
Yes, listeners, look at the JOC, which stands for Joint Operating Company Q Long. This is a massive, multi-billion-dollar oil and gas exploration project.
Massive is almost an understatement.
It operates at Lot 15.1 out in the deep water of the continental shelf. This project was approved by the Vietnamese government back in September 1998. It has been extended twice, and the current contract runs until September 2025.
We are talking about nearly 3 decades of highly complex, high-stakes industrial offshore drilling.
And that entire decades-long operation is structured simply as a business cooperation contract.
Yep. The architecture is a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the Vietnamese state entities, Petro-Vietnam and PVEP, okay? And on the other side, You have a consortium of massive global energy players. Conoco, which later transferred to Perenco, Korea, Petroleum, SK, and Geopetrol.
The financial mechanics of how they share the burden is intense, too. It's a production sharing contract.
Yeah.
That means the Freon Consortium pays for absolutely everything during the exploration and development phase. They take 100% of the upfront financial risk.
Which is a huge gamble.
Exactly. If they drill and hit a dry hole, the Vietnamese side loses nothing, and the foreign companies lose hundreds of millions of dollars. The foreign side only begins to recover their massive costs after the first oil is actually pumped out of the ocean and sold.
Now, that risk allocation is standard for oil exploration. But the corporate structure managing that risk is what makes this case study so fascinating.
This is the detail that completely shocked me. The VIAC lecture explicitly states that this multi-billion-dollar oil enterprise running for decades with global energy giants has a, quote, symbolic charter capital of exactly $1,000 USD.
Just $1,000.
Yeah. Furthermore, the source says it has no legal representative. How can a deep water oil rig operate without a CEO or a legal representative and with only $1,000 to its name?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense. Because the Kulong JOC operates strictly under the BCC framework, it is not a company.
Right.
It does not exist to make a profit for itself, so it doesn't even calculate its own profit or loss.
Right.
It is essentially an administrative ghost whose only purpose is to execute the pre-approved budgets handed down by the actual partners.
So the $1,000 is just...
The $1,000 charter capital is just a placeholder, yeah. Because the real money is held and deployed by the partners themselves, not the GSC.
Wow. And to solve the fact that they have no CEO or legal representative to make decisions, they formed a management committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
They put 8 people on this committee, 4 representing the Vietnamese side, 4 representing the foreign consortium.
Mm-hmm.
They run the daily operations of the rig.
Okay, so a balanced board.
Exactly. For normal, day-to-day operational decisions, the contract requires a 75% majority vote. Because neither side holds 75% of the seats, this elegantly forces consensus. No single side can push through a normal decision without convincing at least some members of the other side.
But for critical human resources and personnel decisions, the contract demands a 100% unanimous vote. Every single one of those 8 people must agree before a major staffing change is made.
Which is brilliant.
It is. That ensures neither the foreign side nor the domestic side can quietly hijack the leadership of the operation. It's a masterclass in using contract law to force cooperation.
It perfectly illustrates why a business would choose a BCC over registering a standard joint venture. The pros and cons highlighted by our legal sources are pretty stark, though.
Yeah, let's talk about those. The pros are all about agility. It is incredibly fast to set up, as we saw with that 15-day window for foreign operating offices.
Mr. Fast.
And it allows businesses with completely different strength to complement each other seamlessly. A local Vietnamese firm provides the essential regulatory knowledge and market access, while a foreign firm brings in heavy capital and advanced technology.
They merge their capabilities for a specific project.
Right, while both maintaining their completely independent corporate status. They don't dilute their own brands or, merge their larger accounting departments.
But the cons stem directly from that same lack of formal structure. Because there is no new legal entity, there is no standardized corporate charter provided by the state to fall back on.
The contract is everything.
The BCC document itself is the charter. If your contract lacks precise, granular detail on how revenue is recognized, exactly how taxes are paid, or the specific mechanisms for resolving management disputes, you will face absolute disaster. You cannot rely on default corporate law to save you if it isn't written into your specific contract.
And there is a massive administrative burden, too. Because there is no separate company to hold funds, one of the partners usually has to step up and use their own company seal, their own bank accounts, and their own internal accounting department to run the daily financial operations of the BCC.
Which can get messy.
It's like paying the shared rent and all the utility bills out of your personal checking account and just, hoping your roommates pay you back on time every month.
Yeah, and that dynamic breeds severe resentment. The partner handling the administration feels they are doing unpaid labor for the project, which leads to disputes.
Is there a way around that?
The expert solution provided by the sources to mitigate this is that you must always establish a formal bandy foo, a coordination board.
Okay, like the committee on the oil rig.
Exactly. Just like the management committee on the rig, this board is specifically tasked with managing the contract fairly, ensuring transparent accounting, and separating the project's daily operations from the host partner's internal business.
Which all circles back to where we started. You cannot enter an arrangement that requires this much trust and integration without doing the rigorous due diligence first.
You really can't.
For you, the listener, navigating this landscape requires knowing exactly which tools to use. We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by acting like private investigators, hunting down exact tax codes and pulling historical documents from local planning departments just to verify a partner's true identity.
Yeah, we did.
And we ended up exploring how to draw up a highly flexible $1,000 charter capital contract to drill for oil in the ocean without ever incorporating a business.
It is a radically different way to view commerce. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over based on the sources we've analyzed today.
Go.
We have been conditioned to think of companies as those fixed buildings with permanent names on the door. We think of the global economy as a collection of these solid, unmoving blocks. But if massive, decades-long international oil extraction projects can be successfully run through a BCC, which is essentially a phantom partnership that exists only on paper without ever forming a true corporate entity, how much of the global economy around you right now is actually being driven by these invisible temporary alliances?
Wow.
It really makes you look at the business world and those permanent buildings in a completely different light.